Hi, I'm David. Thank you for spending the night with us. Tonight we go back more than 600 years to the hilltop palace of the Alhambra in Granada, in the years when its most beautiful rooms were brand new. You arrive at sunset as an invited guest of the court, and an old secretary of the palace walks you through the courtyards by lamplight, past pools and fountains, and walls covered in carved poetry, until a quiet room is ready for you. Everything you will hear is drawn from real history, and the sources are listed below. There are no ads waiting to wake you, and nothing sudden ever happens here. Before we begin, one quiet word. If these nights help you sleep, subscribe now while your eyes are still open, and tomorrow night will be waiting for you when you need it. A like helps other tired travelers find this fire. That is the whole ask. So settle in, let the day go, and let the past keep you company. Good night. Welcome, traveler. You can close your eyes now. There is nothing here you need to see with your eyes open, and nothing here that needs anything from you at all. Tonight, the only work being done is the work of resting, and you're already doing it perfectly. In fact, the place we are going tonight was built more carefully than almost any place on earth to be beautiful to a person whose eyes are closed. You will hear why. Tonight we are going back more than 600 years to the far south of the land that will one day be called Spain, to a green plain ringed by mountains where a river comes down from peaks that keep their snow all summer, and a city climbs two hills facing one another across a narrow gorge. The city is Granada, and on the higher of those two hills, behind long walls, the color of embers, stands the palace you have heard of all your life, under the name the hill itself gave it. The people here call it Alhambra, the Red Fortress, for the red earth its walls are built from. The world will shorten that, in time, to a single word, the Alhambra. It is around the year 1380. The Kingdom of Granada is the last Muslim kingdom in this land, and it knows it, and it has answered that knowledge in the most remarkable way a kingdom ever has, not with gloom, but with gardens. History knows what will come to this kingdom more than 100 years after tonight. Tonight does not know it, and we will not bring it in. In this year, the treaties with the neighboring kings are holding. The frontier is quiet, the roads are open, and the Sultan on this hill has spent his long reign doing the one thing he is now remembered for above all else: building. The palace at the top of this hill has just been made more beautiful than it has ever been. More beautiful, some will say, than any palace of its size in the world, and its newest rooms still smell faintly of cut cedar and fresh plaster, and the paint on the carvings is still bright. You're going to walk through those rooms tonight, slowly, by lamplight, and then you're going to sleep in the middle of them. Nothing bad happens in this palace tonight. Nothing surprising happens either. The gates will be barred at dark in the ordinary way. The lamps will be lit, and then, one by one, put out, and the only decision anyone will ask of you this whole night is whether you would like the honey pastry or the fruit, and you can have both. Tonight is one quiet night, among tens of thousands of quiet nights that history never bothered to write down. That is why we are going. The chronicles kept the treaties and the embassies and the building accounts. They let the ordinary evenings slip through, and the ordinary evenings were most of what a life was, even here, even in the most beautiful palace of the age. You are a scholar tonight, a traveler of books, come a long way with letters of introduction to consult with the learned men of this court, for this small kingdom keeps some of the finest libraries and sharpest minds of its world. and it receives a guest of learning the way other courts receive a prince. You will be lodged tonight inside the palace itself, in a small, quiet room off one of the courtyards, which is an honor and feels like one, and an old man of the chancery, a secretary who has served on this hill most of his life and loves the building the way other men love horses or ships, has been asked to walk you through it this evening, and there is no better fortune in Granada than that. Before this night is over, that old man will give you 2 gifts. The first is a secret hiding in plain sound, the answer to a question you will ask yourself within minutes of arriving. This palace stands on the top of a dry hill. So how is it full of running water? How does a fountain rise on a hilltop? The answer is one of the quiet wonders of the medieval world, and it works entirely without magic. And once you hear it, you will hear the whole palace differently. The second gift is a way of reading. The walls of this palace are covered, floor to ceiling, in carved writing, tens of thousands of words in flowing script, and tonight you will learn what they actually say, including the 6 words. This palace repeats more often than all the others put together, words that a tired person, lying in the dark, can rest on all night long. That is the whole of tonight's story. If you drift off in the middle of it, that is not an interruption. That is the story working. So, let us climb the hill together, out of the city, as the sun goes down. You have spent the afternoon down in Granada itself, in the crowded lanes around the great mosque, where the booksellers keep their stalls, and the silk market rings with half the languages of 2 seas. Granada is a city swollen with life in this century. When other cities of this land changed kings, their craftsmen and scholars and gardeners came south, generation after generation, carrying their skills with them, until this small kingdom held, like a cup held under a long pouring, more than its share of everything fine. Silk woven here is worn by kings who have never seen these mountains. Paper, leather, inlaid wood, glazed tile, carved plaster, the best of each gathers here. And above the whole busy city, on its long hill, the red fortress rides like a ship above a harbor, and all afternoon, whenever you glanced up, it was there, waiting for evening, waiting for you. Now the sun is low, and a servant of the court has come to fetch you, and you climb. The way up goes through a gate in the city wall, and then up the flank of the hill by a steep shaded road, under tall poplars, with water, your first hint of the night's first gift, running downhill beside you in a channel as you walk up, chattering over stones, cool air riding on it. The gorge of the river Darrow falls away on your left, and across it, the other hill of the city, the Albaycin, climbs opposite, white houses stacked on white houses, their small windows beginning to show the first lamps. Behind you, the plain, the Vega, spreads out flat and green and enormous, veined with channels, planted to the horizon with wheat and mulberries and orchards, and the low sun lies along it like spilled honey. And then you come out of the trees, and the walls are above you, and you stop because everyone stops. The Alhambra at sunset performs its one daily piece of theater, and it performs it for free, for everyone, forever. The walls are built of the red earth of the hill itself, rammed and dried in great blocks, and when the level light of evening strikes them, they do not simply glow, they burn, a deep ember red, the exact color of the last coal in a brazier, as if the hill had a warm heart, and this was the hour it showed. The people of the city see it every clear evening of their lives, and they still look up. You look up. The name of the place is simply a description. The Red One. And tonight, As the red deepens minute by minute toward dusk, you are not looking at it from the city, as travelers do. You are walking into it. The Great South Gate stands at the top of a last rise, a tower in its own right, tall as several houses, with a great horseshoe arch opening in its face, like a dark keyhole in a door of fire. This gate is not yet 50 years old. The father of the present sultan built it, and it is the largest of the gates of the hill, and it is built the way this kingdom builds everything, which is to say, it is a fortress and a poem at the same time. As you pass under the outer arch, the servant touches your arm and points up. There, carved into the keystone high above your head, is an open hand. Fingers upward, palm flat, cut cleanly into the stone. And when you have passed through the first shadow and stand before the inner arch, he points again. Carved above this one, a key. A hand on the outer arch, a key on the inner one. Travelers and townspeople tell each different stories about them, he says, smiling. Some say the hand is the open hand of faith, and the key is the key of its authority. Some say they are simply the badges of the gate, the hand that guards, and the key that opens. He shrugs, comfortably, like a man who has heard a dozen explanations, and is fond of all of them, and needs none. A gate you enter under a hand, and a key, he says. However you read it, it is telling you the same thing. This door is watched, and this door is opened. Both are true, and both are good news for a guest. Inside, the gateway does something you do not expect. It bends. The passage turns, and turns again, climbing all the while, so that you cannot see daylight ahead until you are nearly out. This is soldier's work, a bent entrance no charge could ever be carried through at speed. And yet even here, in this most military of corridors, the ceiling above you is painted, and there is a niche where a lamp burns already against the coming dark. That is this place, the old rule of this hill, and you will see it all night. Nothing is only useful, and nothing is only beautiful. The wall that stops an army wears a poem. The lamp that lights a guard room is made of pierced bronze that throws stars on the ceiling. By the time you walk out of the top of the gate into the open evening air of the hill, you have already understood something about the people who built it, and no one has said a word. What you find inside the walls is not what most travelers expect, and the old secretary, who meets you just inside with a lamp in his hand and greets you with both hands, and the long courteous greetings of this country, peace on your arrival, peace on your house, honor to the guest, enjoys your surprise openly, for the Alhambra is not a palace. It is a city that contains palaces. A whole walled town rides the long back of this hill. A paved street runs the length of it, and off that street open the workshops of the royal crafts, the weavers and the smiths, the men who cut glazed tile into stars, the plasterers whose hands you will be admiring all night, and houses, ordinary houses with children asleep in them, and cisterns, and granaries, and a mint where the kingdom's coins are struck, and baths, and a congregational mosque with its own minaret, whose lamp you can see burning now, high up, a warm point against the first stars. At the far western end of the hill, on the prow of the ship, stands the old citadel, the military heart, where the garrison keeps its own quarter behind its own walls, its towers black now against the last orange in the west. Perhaps 2,000 souls live their whole lives up here, the secretary says, from the sultan down to the boy who trims the lamps of the mosque, and to most of Granada below. This hill is simply where the government lives, the way a harbor city knows its castle. but walk it in the evening, he says, and you will find it is also just a town, a small red town in the sky, putting its children to bed. He leads you along the street at an old man's pace, which is the correct pace for this hour, and the evening is doing that thing warm countries do, giving up its heat slowly, the paving stones still warm through your sandals, the air beginning to move gently up from the gorge, carrying the green smell of the river. Doors are closing softly. A woman's voice sings 3 lines of something to a child somewhere and stops. The smell of bread is in the street, and under it, always, the smell of water on stone, that mineral coolness, because even here, along the public street of the hill town, a channel runs, and the sound of it walking beside you is so constant, so companionable, that you have already stopped hearing it, the way you stop hearing your own footsteps. You're going to hear it again, though, because now the secretary stops before a door in a long plain wall, a door of dark cedar studded quietly with iron, and he says, with the pride of a man opening the best book in the library to his favorite page, "The house of the sultan," and he pushes the door, and it swings without a sound, and the sound of water changes. You step over the threshold, and the street is gone. You are standing in a small courtyard, open to the deepening sky, and the first thing it gives you is the thing this house will be giving you all night: water, speaking quietly, close at hand. In the middle of the court, a slender jet rises from a low bowl of white marble, no higher than your hand, and folds back into its basin with a sound like a small voice reciting something it has known by heart for 100 years. That is the change you heard at the door. Out in the street, the channel water ran and chattered and was going somewhere. In here, the water has arrived. It has nowhere else to be, and nothing to do but speak, and it will keep speaking, at this fountain and a dozen others like it until morning. The court is plain, lime-washed, swept, a lamp burning in a niche beside an inner door, and after the great gate and the long street, its smallness is a kindness of its own. The secretary watches you stand still and listen, and he is pleased, because listening is the correct first thing to do in this palace, and most visitors look instead. You noticed, he says, that the door from the street was plain. Remember that, because it is the manner of this country, and of this house above all. Outside, nothing. A red wall, a dark door, silence. Everything fine is turned inward, the way a pomegranate is turned inward, a rough plain rind holding chamber upon chamber of garnets. The palaces of other kings shout across whole valleys, he says. This one keeps its voice low, and saves everything it has for the people it lets in. Tonight, that is you. He leads you on, pausing at the mouth of a long dim hall, lifting his lamp so the light runs in over straightened mats and a raised seat at the far end. The council hall, he says, the mekshwar, where the ministers gather in the mornings, where petitions are heard and disputes are settled, and the slow paperwork of a kingdom is turned over sheet by sheet. He has spent his whole working life, he says, in the small rooms off this one, sharpening pens and keeping registers. Now it stands empty, the inkwell stopped, the day's business folded away until the light comes back for it. There is something deeply restful about a hall of government asleep. The whole machinery of the kingdom has been set down as gently as a tool on a bench, and nothing at all is being decided, anywhere, tonight. Then a second small court opens, and on its far side, lit by 2 hanging lamps, you meet the first true page of this palace, and you stop and look up, because everyone does. It is a wall made like a book. A tall facade rises the full height of the court, and from the lintels of its doors to the carved cedar eaves far overhead, every hand's breadth of it is worked. Bands of glazed tile below, green and white and honey-colored, and above them carved plaster, panel upon panel, fine as the border of a manuscript, and running through it all, in long ribbons, lines of flowing script you cannot read. Yet, beneath all of it, stand two doors, side by side, tall, identical, twins, down to the last nailhead. One of them, the secretary says, leads onward into the heart of the house. The other leads away into the service passages of the household. Which is which, the wall does not say, and never will. This palace tells a guest everything it wishes to tell, he says, and keeps the rest with perfect courtesy, and the keeping is done so beautifully that you cannot even see where it happens. But that, he says, taking up the lamp again, is for after supper. Nobody should be asked to meet this building on an empty stomach. Supper is laid in a small warm room off the court, a room the men of the chancery use, and it is laid on the floor in the manner of this country, which turns out to be the most restful way a meal was ever served. A round cloth is spread over the carpets, low dishes are set upon it, cushions are drawn up all around, and you sit and fold your tired legs under you, and your back and shoulders thank you for it. A servant brings a ewer and a wide basin of bright brass and pours warm water, faintly scented with rose, over your hands, and by the time your fingers are dry in the linen towel, you have understood in your body that nothing about this evening is going to be hurried. The food is the food of a kingdom that grows almost everything it loves within sight of its own towers. Warm, flat bread of wheat from the Vega, the great green plain you watch turning gold all afternoon, olives and their oil, green and peppery, for the bread, a stew of lamb, gentle and fragrant, thickened with almonds and warmed with saffron, the precious yellow spice this land grows and sells to half the world. A dish of eggplant fried soft in the same good oil, fresh white cheese with honey, and then the tray of sweet things, and with it the one decision this whole night will ask of you, exactly as promised, the honey pastry or the fruit. The pastries are little folded things of thin dough and crushed almonds, fried and drowned in honey. The fruit is whatever this first week of June has ripened. Cherries, apricots, the first figs, mulberries dark as ink from the very trees the silkworms feed on, and beside them, candied peel of citron, glittering with sugar from the cane fields, down on the warm coast, for this kingdom grows sugar beside the sea. You take the pastry. You also take the fruit. The old man nods, satisfied, as though you have passed a small examination, and takes both himself. To drink there is water, cool from the palace cisterns, in a cup of glass, and a sweet drink of lemon and honey, faintly perfumed with blossom water from the bitter orange trees of the city's courtyards. No wine is poured at this table, and none is missed. And the old man talks, lightly, the way a good host talks, filling the quiet without asking anything of it. Of the learned men you have come to meet, who will receive you tomorrow at the madrasa down in the city, the college the present sultan's father founded beside the great mosque 30 years ago, where law and medicine and the courses of the stars are read aloud, morning after morning. Of the peace which is holding, and the roads which are open, and the harvest which was good. Of the snows on the far Sierra, which were heavy this winter, and why that is the best news a dry country can hear. For reasons he will show you, he promises, before you sleep. And of the craftsmen of this city, so famous that in his own lifetime, the King of Castile himself, wanting a palace worthy of his capital, sent to Granada for plasterers and carpenters and masters of tile, and got them too, for the kings of this age fight, and make peace and fight again, but the craftsmen outlast every treaty. Keep that in your pocket, he says, taking the last mulberry. It will come back to you tonight. The dishes come and go on quiet feet, and it would be wrong not to say honestly what your own eyes tell you, that the ease of this evening rests in part on the labor of the many who serve, some free and paid, and some enslaved, for that is the shape of every court in this age, in this kingdom, as in the kingdoms of all its neighbors, and we will not pretend otherwise. Tonight, every soul under this roof will end the day fed and sleep safe within the same walls, and that is the truth of this one night, and it is the picture we are keeping. At last the ewer comes around again, warm water over your fingers, the towel, a few seeds of anise to sweeten the mouth, and the old man rises, with the careful ceremony of a man whose knees have carried him up this hill for 50 years, and takes up his lamp and smiles. Now, he says, the moon is up. Come and meet the house. He does not take you back the way you came. He opens a small door and leads you along a bent passage, cool and dark, his lamp making the wall slide slowly past, and you notice something strange about what lies ahead of you. There's no sound ahead. All evening, this palace has been talking to you in water, and now you are walking toward a silence, and the silence is enormous. Then the passage turns one last time and lets you out, and you understand what the silence is. You are standing at the end of a great open court, long as a garden, still as held breath, roofed with the whole night sky, and down the middle of it, from end to end, lies water. A pool, more than 40 paces long and 10 across, flat as a sheet of dark glass, without one ripple on it anywhere. And standing in that water, upside down, complete to the last battlement, is a tower. You look up. At the far end of the court, the real tower stands against the stars, the greatest tower of the palace, huge and square-shouldered, and in its face one high window glows with lamplight. You look down, and there is the tower again, perfect, floating in the pool, its lamp-lit window burning in the water, and while you stand there, the moon clears the eastern rampart at last, and steps into the pool as well, and lies down beside the tower. The water holds them all without effort. Tower, lamp, moon, stars. Later centuries will fasten their own names on these rooms, and this one they will call the Court of the Myrtles, for the hedges that run dark and glossy beside the water. The secretary picks a single myrtle leaf and crushes it and holds it out to you, and a clean, sweet, resinous scent springs up, and you carry it with you as you walk the long side of the pool. Two slow men and their two slow reflections. How, you ask him, is it kept so still? A pool this size, fed by running water, ought to shiver somewhere. He takes you to the end of the pool and shows you, delighted, a low round bowl of pale marble, wide and shallow, into which the water rises so gently it does not even bubble. It fills and brims and slides over the ring of its lip in a sheet thinner than a knife blade, and enters the pool with no fall at all. Nothing falls, so nothing splashes. Nothing splashes, so nothing ripples. There is a twin bowl at the other end, doing the same patient work. This stillness, he says, is not a mood. It is engineering, as deliberate as an arch. The builders wanted one court where the water's whole task is to be a mirror. So they taught it to arrive in silence, and it has arrived in silence through every year of his long life. And why a mirror? He points with his chin at the tower lying in the pool. Because stone is heavy, he says, and a reflection weighs nothing. By day it doubles the sky itself, blue above and blue below, and a palace that could never afford a second tower of stone may have one of water for the price of stillness. Kings pay for their glories in gold, he says, starting up the court again at his old man's pace. This one glory is paid for in quiet every hour, forever, and it is the best bargain on the hill. At the tower end of the court, a portico stands on columns so slender you would swear no roof could trust them, and beyond it, through a tall doorway banded with carving, the tower itself opens, and you walk into the grandest room in the kingdom. It is one single square hall, and it goes up and up. The lamp cannot find the ceiling. The walls climb away into darkness, and every hand of them is worked, band above band, like a book too tall to read to the end. These walls, the secretary says, laying his palm flat against the carving, are thicker through than a man is tall, and cut into that thickness, on three sides of the hall, are deep alcoves, each one a small room in its own right, each ending in windows of wooden lattice. By day, he says, every alcove frames its own picture, the white houses of the Albaicin, stacked on their hill, the gorge of the Darro, the Vega running green to the mountains. The alcove in the center of the far wall, facing the door, is the sultan's own. There he sits, with the light behind him, to receive the ambassadors of other kings. He beckons you into one of the alcoves now, and unlatches the lattice, and lets you lean into the deep sill with the night on your face. Below you, far below, the city. Granada's going to bed. Hundreds of small warm lights lie scattered down the opposite hillside and along the river, and while you watch, they go out, a few at a time, unhurried, like a brazier settling for the night. Under everything, faint and silvery, you can hear the Darro at the bottom of its gorge, talking to itself in its sleep. Then the secretary draws you back into the middle of the hall and holds his lamp as high as his old arm will take it and says, "Look up now." And the darkness above you glitters. High overhead, filling the whole square of the tower, hangs a ceiling of cedar wood, made of small cut pieces, thousands upon thousands. The men of the work say more than 8,000, everyone shaped and fitted by hand, joined into stars, and ranks of stars, and wheels of stars, rising tier above tier, 7 tiers in all, stepping inward and upward toward the crown, and at the very crown, so faint in the lamplight you must take it half on trust, a small cupola of interlaced wood, like a knot tied at the top of the sky. 7 tiers, the secretary says quietly. 7 heavens. This ceiling is not a decoration, it is a diagram. The faith of this house teaches that the heavens are 7, one above another, each with its ranks of stars, and that above the 7th, higher than everything made, stands the throne of God. And that is what the carpenters built, out of cedar, over the head of the king. When the sultan sits beneath it, and the ambassadors of the great kingdoms stand before him on this floor, every man in the room, whatever his language, is told the same thing without one word spoken aloud. Above every throne, more sky. Above every king, 7 heavens of it. The meaning of this room, in the end, is not the greatness of the man who sits here. It is the size of what is over him. He lowers the lamp, and the stars of cedar go back into the dark, all at once, like a night sky blown out. Remember the ceiling, he says, leading you back toward the moonlit court. The building has one thing to say, and it says it everywhere, in wood, in water, in plaster. Before you sleep tonight, you will have heard it in plain words. He takes you out by a side way, onto the quiet street of the hill town again, higher along its length now, and turns east, uphill, toward the top of the ridge. The lamps of the houses are nearly all out. The mosque lamp still burns above the rooftops, and beside the way, in its stone channel, the water is running toward you, out of the dark at the crown of the hill, and the question you have carried all evening finally comes out of you. This hill is dry rock. The river is far below, at the bottom of its gorge. You have seen fountains rise all night on a hilltop. Where is this water coming from? The old man stops walking. He has been waiting for this, you realize, the way a man waits to show you the best room in his house. No spring on this hill, he agrees, could feed one basin of that palace, and no wheel ever built could lift a river this high, and if one could, you would hear it, groaning and laboring all night, and this palace would sound like a mill. So the men who made this place did something quieter and much cleverer. They did not lift the water at all. Nearly 150 years ago, when the first sultan of this line chose this hill, his engineers walked upstream along the Darrow, back into the hills, a morning's walk and more, until they came to a place where the bed of the river stood higher than the top of this hill. That is the whole secret, he says, spreading his old hands. They went to where the river was already above us. There they cut a mouth into the river's flank, a gate of stone, and turned aside a share of the water, a share the river never misses, and then they led it home. A river falls steeply, because it must follow its valley. A channel falls exactly as its makers please. So while the Darrow went plunging down its gorge, losing height with every stride, the channel they had cut clung to the flank of the valley and gave up almost nothing, falling only a finger's breadth where the river fell, the height of a man, running along ledges, riding walls of built stone across the folds of the hills. The channel does not climb, he says. Understand that, and you have it. The channel simply refuses to fall, and mile after mile, the whole country falls away beneath it. By the time it reaches the neighboring hill, that borrowed water is riding high above the palace roofs. It waters the gardens of the summer palace first, the general life, sleep on its terraces across the little ravine. Then it crosses to this hill on a bridge of arches and enters the walls at the very top of the ridge, higher than every court and every basin and every lamp in the Alhambra. The people of the hill call it the Sultan's Channel, and later ages will keep the name in a word borrowed from this land's own tongue, the Acequia Real, the Royal Channel. It is the true founder of this palace. The walls only defend this place, he says. The channel is why it is alive. And from the top of the hill, the water is given to the whole town, the way blood is given to a body. Into cisterns, and holding tanks first, up at the crown. From there into pipes of fired clay, buried under the streets and the floors, sealed tight, running downhill into every court of the palace. And here is the gift he promised you, the secret hiding in plain sound. Water shut in a sealed pipe does not forget the height it came from. Lead the pipe downhill and then turn its mouth upward, and the water will climb back toward its remembered level with all the patient strength in the world. and where its mouth opens in the middle of a marble bowl, it rises past the rim and blooms into the air, and men call it a fountain. Every jet you have heard tonight, he says, every thread of water standing up out of stone in this whole palace, is nothing but the acequia arriving, pressing down from its tanks on the height, and rising wherever it is given leave. A fountain is a river remembering its height. And so, he says, walking you slowly to the parapet at the edge of the street, this palace keeps 100 waters running through the dark, and no one carries a single jar. No wheel turns tonight, no hand lifts anything. The pools fill themselves, the baths are fed, the channels run under the sleeping rooms, and nothing is spent once only. The water that stood in the Sultan's pool this evening will scour a kitchen before dawn and slip out through the walls to the orchards on the southern slope, so that by morning it will be raising somebody's beans below the wall. The mountain sends it, the channel walks it in, the pipes remember for it, and it costs the sleeping palace nothing at all. Then he turns you east and points above the black shoulders in the nearer hills, and there, long and pale and very far, lying along the top of the darkness under the stars, is snow. The Sierra Nevada, the range the people below simply call the Sierra, keeps its snow on the high crests even now, in June, and by starlight it gleams faintly, like a bolt of silver cloth unrolled along the horizon. Down in the city, he says, smiling, they will tell you this palace drinks the snow. Look at it. It is a fair thing to believe, but the truth is tidier, and he likes it better. The snow feeds the other river, the Genil, which comes down cold out of the high Sierra and waters the Vega, its 1,000 orchards and wheat fields, the very bread you ate tonight. This hill drinks the little Darro, which rises in gentler, greener hills much nearer by. So the snow feeds the plain, he says, and the plain feeds the city, and the hills feed the palace, and everything alive in this kingdom is drinking, all night while it sleeps. That is why an old man asks after the snows in June, and why heavy snow in winter is the kindest news this country knows. He leads you back down the street a little way, to a door in another plain wall, and by now you know better than to judge this kingdom by its doors. A short passage, another turn, the sound of water changing once more, running now and falling, many small voices at once, and then he stands aside and lets you walk out ahead of him into the newest courtyard in the world. A forest is your first thought. You have walked into a forest of white marble. Columns rise everywhere around a long open court. Columns slender as young birch trees, standing singly and in pairs and in clusters of 3, more than 120 of them in all, and off the top of each springs, carving, arches of worked plaster so fine, so pierced and layered, that the stone lace of it seems to hang from the arches rather than hold them. This is the palace the present sultan has only just finished, the pride of his long reign, so new that the colors are still perfect. By lamplight you can see blue and red and gold glowing deep in the carved plaster, and somewhere under everything is the faint sweet smell of fresh cut cedar. 2 pavilions stand out into the court at either end on their own clusters of columns, like tents of stone pitched at the edges of a clearing. Under the arcades the ceilings gather into hundreds of small hollow cells, cell above cell like honeycomb, hollowed out of the plaster. The craftsmen call the work muqarnas, and when the secretary raises his lamp beneath it, the whole vault flickers and shifts, holding light and shadow together the way a comb holds honey. and in the center of the court stand the lions. 12 lions of pale marble, gathered in a ring, shoulder to shoulder, facing outward, each one different if you look slowly. They are not the lions of a hunt. They are stout, upright, patient, with square, honest faces, lions of a fable that have taken a long post and mean to keep it. On their backs they carry a great round basin, wide as an embrace, and the basin brims, and from the mouth of every lion springs a bright thread of water, 12 threads falling together, and where the lamplight touches them, they burn like drawn silver wire. Below them, the water gathers and sets out. 4 narrow channels leave the fountain, straight as rules, toward the 4 sides of the court, cut flush into the pavement, each no wider than your 2 fingers, and they do not stop at the rooms. You watch the nearest channel run, glittering across the court, reach the shadow of a doorway, and go inside, under the arches, into the hall beyond, where it ends at a small round fountain, set level with the floor. The water has the freedom of this house. It walks in and out of the finest rooms of the kingdom all night, like a guest so honored no doors ever close to it. Between the walkways the ground drops away. The planting beds are sunk below the paved paths, so that the low dark herbs and flowers grow with their blossoms down around your feet. And to cross the court by day, the secretary says, is to walk on paths that float above a living carpet. The men of learning here like to read the whole court as a picture of the Garden of Paradise, as Scripture describes it, with its rivers flowing out to the 4 quarters of the world. Whether the builders meant it so exactly, he says, no one troubled to write down, but stand here at night, with the 4 streams setting out from the center, and the marble forest holding up the sky, and it is a very easy thing to think. He brings the lamp close to the great basin, and shows you the rim. It is carved, the whole way around, with verses. His own chief wrote them, he says, with a touch of pride he does not try to hide. The head of the chancery himself, the sultan's first poet, and the younger men made the fair copies that went to the carvers. Roughly rendered, the verses tease your eyes. They ask whether you can truly tell, looking at this fountain, which is the water and which is the marble. For the water seems carved and polished as it stands in the air, and the white stone seems to flow. Silver melted into motion, they say, among pearls carved into stillness. And the lions, say the verses, are like the open hand of the king, which pours and pours and is never empty. He straightens up and pats the rim of the basin the way you would pat the neck of a good horse. By day this court belongs to the household, he says. At this hour it belongs to the water and to you. On the north side of the court, where the finest of the halls opens its doors, he does a small, lovely thing. He follows the water home. The little channel in the pavement leads in through the doorway, and the 2 of you walk beside it, upstream, into the hall, and find its source, a small fountain, set flush in the middle of the marble floor, bubbling softly, so that the room has a voice of its own, a low, steady syllable it says all night. In the floor nearby lie 2 broad slabs of white marble, side by side, twins. Later ages, he tells you, will point to those and call this the Hall of the 2 Sisters. The palace, as usual, calls it nothing and lets it speak for itself. Sit down on the cushions there, he says. For this room, that is the proper way. And when you are settled, he raises the lamp, and you look up, and above you the room dissolves. The walls climb, band over carved band, and then, where any ordinary hall would close in a ceiling, this one opens instead into a dome that does not seem to be built so much as breathed. It is made entirely of the honeycomb work, the muqarnas, small hollow cells, stepping up and up, ring above ring, turning as they climb, thousands of them. The palace people say 5,000 and more, and no one who begins counting ever finishes. It is like the inside of a cloud, if a cloud could be carved, like frost ferns, grown across a whole sky, and it moves. As the old man swings the lamp slowly at arm's length, the light travels, and cell after cell catches it and lets it go, wave after wave, so that the whole dome seems to turn above you like a slow constellation, though nothing moves at all but the flame in his hand. Around the walls, at the height of your reach, a single poem runs the whole way around the room, verse after verse, carved and painted by the same master whose lines ring the fountain outside. Roughly rendered, it does not apologize for this dome. It boasts of it. It claims that the fixed stars of heaven, if they were offered lodgings, would leave the sky and come to live here, and that Granada below is a bride, and this palace the crown she wears. Sitting under that slow lamplit turning, you find you are not entirely certain the poet was wrong. Beyond the hall, on its far side, a low arch leads to a small room jutting out over the gardens, a room the size of a boat's cabin, and its windows begin at your knee. The sills are set low on purpose, the secretary says, so that a person seated on the floor cushions, as this country prefers to sit, looks straight out with no need to rise. It is a room built entirely for looking, an eye set in the palace's face. Below, inside the walls, an open garden slopes away into the dark, beds and fruit trees by moonlight, the pomegranates carrying their June flowers, small and red as flames that give no light. Beyond and below lies the city, its last lamps going out along the river, the white hill opposite fading into sleep. Around the window arch, carved neat as handwriting, runs a short inscription. Roughly rendered, the secretary says, the little room is speaking about itself. It says that in this palace it is the eye, and that everything beautiful in Granada passes before it. Notice, he says, settling himself on the cushions beside you with an old man's sigh, what that carving just did. The room said I. You have now heard the trick of the whole building, and it is time you learn to read. Every fine room in this palace, he begins, wears 3 garments, and you have been looking at them all evening without their names. Below, to the height of your shoulder, tile, glazed pieces in black and green and white and honey, cut one by one with pincers, and set together into stars and knots and ribbons, patterns that interlace and travel, and arrive back where they began, exact to a hair. The tile work is called alicatado, the cut work, cool and hard and forever, the garment for the part of a wall that hands touch. Above the tile, plaster, carved while it is half set, in workshops just up the street, panel by panel, with knives and patience, then painted, blue and red and green, the deep grounds picked out with gold, and overhead, always, wood, cedar joined into stars, the 3rd garment, the roof of every fine room a piece of sky, fired earth below, carved cloud between, cedar heaven above, and through all 3 garments run the words, this is what he has saved for last. The walls of this palace carry more writing than many libraries, tens of thousands of words, and almost no pictures of any living thing, for this house prefers the word the way other palaces prefer the portrait. The writing is of 3 kinds, he says, holding up 3 old fingers, and when you can tell them apart, you can read any room in the Alhambra. The first kind is scripture, verses of the faith, set where they suit the purpose of a room. The second kind is blessing. Look at any doorway, he says, and you will find, repeated along the frame, small compact words, over and over, blessing, felicity, well-being. The doorways of this palace wish you well as you pass through them, and a person here passes 100 doorways in a day, so that the building murmurs good wishes over its people from morning to night, the way a grandmother does, too quietly to answer, too constantly to notice, except that now you have noticed, and you will never walk through a door of this palace again without being wished well. And the third kind is poetry, whole poems, made for these exact walls, the way a song is made for a voice, by the masters of the pen of this chancery, 3 across 3 generations, each in his turn the Sultan's own secretary for the letters of state. The newest, on the walls of the court of the lions and the great dome you sat under, are by the man who is chief of the chancery this very year. And the strangest, most wonderful habit of these poems you have already caught. The building speaks as I. The walls do not say, this is a garden. Roughly rendered, they say, I am a garden adorned with beauty. Look at me, and you will know. The fountain speaks. The little room with the low window speaks. The gate speaks. Nobody is ever quite alone in this palace, he says, because the rooms themselves have voices and good manners, and a guest lying awake at midnight in lamplight is still, in the strict sense, in conversation. Now, he says, the last lesson, and then you have your letters. He rises and brings the lamp to the nearest wall, and finds without searching, the way you find a word on a page, you know, one short phrase in a plain cartouche, compact, balanced, a few strokes of flowing script. You have seen it all night, he says, and he is right. At the gate, along the street, in the council hall, around the mirror pool, under the 7 heavens, on the rim of the fountain of the lions. It is carved on this hill more times than anyone has counted, more often than everything else on all these walls put together. In the tongue of this land, it is one short breath. In yours it needs 6 words. There is no victor but God. The court tells a story about those words, he says, and he tells it to you the way it is told, as a story. The first sultan of this line, the founder, who chose this red hill and cut the channel and raised the first walls, once rode home from a war he had joined not by his own wish, but by treaty, at the side of the King of Castile, for that was the price of his small kingdom's peace. And when he came home to Granada, the crowds ran out and hailed him at the gate with the victor's cry, Conqueror, conqueror. And he would not carry that word into his house. There is no victor but God, he answered them, and made those words the motto of his line. And his sons, and their sons, and their sons, have carved the answer onto everything they have built for 150 years. Whether it happened exactly so, no chronicle can promise you, the old man says, spreading his hands. Courts keep the stories that fit them. But the carving is real. You are leaning against it, a royal house that answers every triumph, every embassy, every new tower with those same 6 words. And here's the part the men of the chancery tell each other with a certain quiet smile, and now he tells it to you. Remember the craftsman of Granada, lent in his lifetime to the King of Castile for the palace in Seville. They worked in the manner they knew, the only manner their hands held. And so, in the halls of that Christian king, among his castles and his lions, and his own proud emblems, the carved plaster carries, in flowing Arabic script, the same 6 words. There is no victor but God, says the palace of Castile itself, to this day, to everyone who can read it. The kings fight and make peace, he says, and the craftsmen outlast the treaties, and some words outlast even the craftsmen. He sits back down beside you, quiet for a moment, and the small fountain in the floor of the great hall says its low syllable over and over in the dark behind you. Think, he says at last, what 6 words like those are worth to a tired man at the end of a day. They are not a boast. Kings do not carve a boast that humbles kings. They are a permission. Whatever was won today, down in the world, and whatever was lost there, the wall gives it all the same answer and then asks nothing further of anyone. The outcome of everything rests in greater hands than yours, says the wall, and rested there all along. So set it down, traveler. You are never carrying it. That is what this building has been telling you all evening, in wood and in water and in plaster, under the 7 heavens and beside the mirror pool and around the basin of the lions. And now it has told you in plain words, and you can read them, and they will be over the door of the room where you sleep. It is late now. As he walks you back through the forest of columns, the last lamps of the arcades are being pinched out ahead of you, one, by hands you never see. And then, from far below, out of the dark bowl of the city, a voice rises. One voice first, thin and high and silvered by distance. Then another joins it, from another minaret, and a third, and more, none quite together, the calls overlapping and braiding across the sleeping city, and then, much nearer, from the mosque up the street of the hill town, the muezzin of the Alhambra itself takes up the same call over your head. It is the Isha, the night prayer, the last public sound this whole kingdom makes before morning. The lamps of Granada go out beneath the voices as you listen, and the calls thin and lap and fade, and the night closes over the city as softly as the surface of the long pool. The secretary takes both your hands in both of his, as he did at meeting. He will go now to pray with the household, he says, and then an old man will find his bed. The boy will light you to your room, where everything is ready. May your night be blessed, guest of this house, and your rest be sweet, and your morning find you well. You try to thank him for the evening, for the gates and the water and the words, and he shakes his head once, smiling. Thank the house, he says. I only carried the lamp. And he goes off up the quiet street toward the mosque, unhurried, his little flame swinging small and warm beside him, until the street turns and keeps it. A boy leads you the short way, along an arcade, through a passage, into a small whitewashed courtyard, where one thin jet of water talks quietly to a marble bowl, and there, behind a cedar door, is your room. It is small, and it is perfect. Carpets on the floor, and at the end of the room, in a raised alcove framed by one carved arch, your bed. A deep wool mattress, linen smooth as still water, and over it a coverlet of silk, Granada silk, woven perhaps a few doors up this very street, the color of the last of the sunset. In a niche shelf beside the alcove burns a small lamp of glass, olive oil, and a wick, a flame the size of an almond. The walls are carved plaster up into shadow, and around the room, too high to read by this light, runs a band of script, and over the door you came in by, exactly as promised, 6 compact words you now know by heart. The shutters stand ajar on the courtyard, and the warm June air moves in over you, carrying water and myrtle. The boy bows and is gone, and the door closes softly, and the night is yours. You undress and lie down in the alcove and pull the silk up over you, and the bed receives you the way the pool received the moon. Beside you the lamp burns low. Beyond the shutters, the little fountain goes on with its small, endless conversation. Water and marble, question and answer. No hurry anywhere in it, and you already know it will not stop. Not once. All night long. Listen now. The whole hill is going to sleep around you, and every sound it makes is a good sound. The gates were barred at dark, the hand and the key both keeping their promises. The watch walks the far ramparts at a pace no faster than the moon's. In the kitchens, the fires are banked. In the chancery, the pens are wiped and laid down, the day's letters folded and tied. The mosque lamp burns on above the rooftops, as it does all night, every night. In the great tower, the 7 heavens of cedar hang over a dark and empty floor. The long pool is holding the tower and the moon with nobody at all to see, and does not mind. A mirror is patient. The 12 lions pour and pour into the lamplit dark, and up at the crown of the hill, the royal channel arrives, and arrives, and arrives, because the river never stops remembering. Somewhere beyond several walls, the sultan himself is asleep under his painted ceilings, lulled by the same sound that is lulling you, for that is the one democracy of this hill. The king, the scholar, the boy who trims the mosque lamps, every soul inside these red walls is being sung to sleep tonight by the same water. Far down the valley, a nightingale sings a few phrases and thinks better of it. A scops owl says its one soft word. A cedar door closes gently, somewhere, a long way off, and under everything, always, the water. Tomorrow the palace will wake without any help from you. The mats of the council hall will be straightened, the petitions heard, the pens sharpened. Down in the city, the madrasa will fill with voices. The learned men will receive you kindly. The booksellers will open their stalls. The gardeners will walk the sunken beds. But that is tomorrow, and tomorrow is not your concern, and it is not here yet, and it keeps. History, which knows so many heavy things, will keep what it knows till morning too. And here is one certain thing, to carry into sleep instead. More than 600 years after tonight, the channel the old kings cut will still be running. Travelers past counting will climb this hill and stand at the edge of the long pool and see the tower lying perfect in the water, just as you saw it. The 12 lions will still be pouring, and on the walls, wherever light falls, the same 6 words will say what they have always said. Kingdoms are not good at keeping promises. Buildings are better. Water is best of all. The fountain outside your shutters is that promise being kept, softly, a syllable at a time, all night long. Your breathing has gone slow and deep. Let the day drain out of you now, the way this palace lets its water go. Downhill, unhurried, out through the walls in the dark, off to feed some orchard you will never see. It is not yours to carry. None of it was ever yours to carry. The wall above your door has the last word tonight, and it is a kind one. And the ceiling of cedar over the sleeping king says the same. And the little fountain agrees, over and over, in the oldest language there is. The lamp beside you is down to a breath of gold. You may let it go out. This palace was built, more carefully than any place on earth, to be beautiful to a person whose eyes are closed. Close your eyes then. Everything after this, the palace does for you. The pool will keep till morning. The lions will keep till morning. The water is keeping the night. Sleep now, traveler. Good night. History will keep till morning.